All right, we're feeling the funk here on the Alvin Galloway Show, and that's Jamaica Funk. Funkin' for Jamaica. Tom Brown, that takes us back for a couple of years of still jamming on the funkiness. And I'm here with Dr. Neal Lester, my twin.
Hello again. Hello. That sounded a little bit like Shaka Khan in there. Shaka Khan was never with that group, was she?
No,
Okay.
she wasn't.
That Shaka Khan sound.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who was singing the lead. I don't think it wasn't Shaka Khan.
It wasn't Shaka. It's got that Shaka sound.
It's got that Shaka sound. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Dr. Lester's been on the show a few times.
Thank you very much.
And a lot of folks get us confused, as we know, even at church and we're around the city. But anyway, we call each other a twin brother. Yeah. So tell us, now you're the director of Project Humanities.
Yes.
We'll delve into that.
Okay.
So tell us a little bit about Project Humanities.
Project Humanities has been around since 2010, and I was fortunate enough to be charged by the university president at the time to make humanities more robust. Mm-hmm. And it was a time when we were having the economic downturn, and somehow that moment underscored for a lot of people, this question of, well, what are you going to do with a humanities degree? Mm. And a lot of the schools across the country, higher education institutions, were actually getting rid of their language courses. And so having been with the Arizona Humanities, which was Arizona Humanities Council at the time, I knew that the value of public humanities could potentially help us make the argument for why humanities really still matters, is if we could get the public involved and not make humanities just an academic conversation. So there was an effort to demystify, so we came up with Project Humanities, which is about talking, listening, connecting. And you don't have to go to the NEH website to look at disciplines, but we try to bring individuals and communities together to do those three things, and that is doing humanities. And we have since, what started off initially as supposed to be a week of intense programming and events ended up being a month, then it ended up being a year, and I'm pleased to say that we were just granted multi-year funding so that we're not just renewing every year. So that's a vote of confidence from the university, and I hope is a sign that we are having some impact.
Absolutely. Now you have, 7 principles?
Yes. Yeah. We back in 2000, because we've been evolving and making sure that we remain relevant and connected with what's happening in the world. And so probably 2000, I want to say probably 14-ish. Mm-hmm. I raised the question of how could we get people more connected to humanities? Because people can connect to science and STEM, and science, technology, engineering, math, business. Mm-hmm. You don't have to question that. Even the arts to some extent. People kind of know what that is if you're going to a production or if you're going to see an art exhibition. But when it comes to humanities, there's still this like, well, what is it kind of thing? Mm-hmm. So we were trying to figure out how could we, as Project Humanities, have a kind of national conversation about the immediacy of humanities mattering. So rather than ask people to talk about a crisis in humanities, we thought, well, what if we broaden that question to say, are we losing our humanity? And that question became a refrain for many of us. Kenja Hassan was also part of that thinking.
Okay.
And we had this wonderful conversation that was multidisciplinary, multi-professional, a little bit intergenerational. We left that space at the National Press Club in Washington with this said, well, now we've had this good conversation about humanities and how it allows us to be our best selves. Now, what are you going to do? So we thought, well, we got to create something. So another supporter and I got together and said, well, why don't we come up with a toolbox of strategies, both virtual and real, and we'll call it Humanity 101, which is not a class, but rather something that is foundational to the success of whatever it is you're defining as successful. Okay. We came up with these 7 principles, and we've been trying to promote these principles so that people are thinking about these in more deliberate ways. And what we recognize is when you talk about compassion and integrity and respect and forgiveness and kindness and self-reflection, empathy, nobody has to define those for us. What we have to do is make sure that we are practicing them.
And boy, do we need to practice them.
Practicing, because it's
practice them today.
And it could manifest itself in very different ways. I mean, I do privilege and bias work and workshops, and one of the things that's coming to make meaning for me and for other people is the fact that we have so many unconscious biases that feed into the decisions that we make and the ways that we behave.
Right.
So if we can become aware of those, then we can figure out what we're bringing to the table and not just focus on what other people are doing.
Right.
And that's hard to do.
Definitely hard to do.
That's hard to do,
Yeah,
as all of those are.
Yeah.
But they're not impossible. And if we're going to be our better selves, which I still naively believe and optimistically believe, James Baldwin, who said, I can't be pessimistic because I'm still alive. And I add to that I'm a teacher. So, there has to be this possibility not only that I can learn and grow, but also that I'm doing something that will allow other people to learn and grow. That's where the hopefulness comes in this.
Yeah, definitely an opportunity that surrounds us today to foster those ideas.
Well, and I mentioned earlier when we had friend and poet Nikki Giovanni here a couple of times, she was talking about poetry and compassion. So I wanted to make sure that people in the audience out at Mesa Arts Center knew that she had come not just to read poetry, which is fine in of itself, but that she was coming under this umbrella of are we losing our humanity? So I sat on the stage and I said, well, so are we losing our humanity? And her response was profoundly simple. She said, well, when did we ever have it? And I was like, wow, that's really true, because there has always been what Charles Dickens says, the best and the worst that we as humans have had to reconcile. And it's often the worst that can also bring out the best. And if we could sort of manage those in ways that keep us behaving in respectful ways. And I go back to President Obama, who, when he was down at the Tucson tragedy, said we may not be able to stop all the evil in the world, but how we treat each other is entirely up to us.
Absolutely.
So that has to be empowering. So that's what that has come from. This is not a we are the world, let's sing the Coke song, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's also to look at the science of these principles. What happens, for example, when we don't forgive people and when you hold on to things that shackle you spiritually, psychologically. And that is not to say that forgiving people is forgetting,
right,
but it's saying the extent to which we will allow ourselves to be liberated through this transformative act. Bell Hooks has even talked about that too. That's what this is about.
It was interesting when you talk about how we forgive, not forget, but during, we just marked the 17th anniversary of 9/11.
Right.
And and this is a story I hadn't heard about, but I found it on the internet. This young girl who was 11 years old, her name was Aisha. I can't quite remember her last name, but she's young, a small black young girl. And she won an essay contest, her and another kid from D.C., and they were flying to a competition and was in one of the planes that went down in the Pentagon, the one that went into the Pentagon. And her parents said that they could have been lost in that tragedy, and what they did, what happened was that people started sending them letters, but in the letters it was money in the denominations of 11, because she was 11 years old and everything. And then they started opening, and they was like, what are we going to do with this? So they set up a scholarship fund in her daughter, and a foundation in their daughter's name, and start providing scholarships to kids. I think so far over $200,000 in scholarships to kids. Nice. And their daughter was into science and into STEM and everything, and so that's what they provided. But you have to overcome that.
Well, and I certainly don't want any of our listening audience to think that you minimize whatever it has been that someone has done to us. But we have created workshops, keynotes, and one of the things that resonated with me in one of those exercises in a workshop was the instructions were to find a partner, talk to that partner for 1 minute about someone who has done something really good for you. And what ended up happening is, as people paired off, we saw that people started listing things. And it wasn't really a narrative. They just started listing things, and they actually ran out of things because it was just, well, what can I think of? What can I think of? And the other part of that was now talk to that partner about someone who has done something really bad to you. And what was interesting about that we not only witnessed, but we also participated in, is that we have rehearsed that over and over in our minds, the trauma that people have done, that it becomes like you relive it every time you tell it. And the sort of lesson of that particular exercise was, well, if you could release that, which does not say that you are not still affected by it, but if you're still affected by it in such a way that you can't continue to live in the present, then it's still holding on to you. And we've got so many lessons like that. I mean, look at the 9 people shot in Charleston, and some of those family members come and saying, "I forgive you," or the young man Michael Donald, who was killed in Mobile, Alabama, lynched by the KKK, and his grandmother said, "Of course I forgive you. I'm not going to be standing at the gates and then have somebody say." Now, that's if you have a certain faith system.
Right.
But the whole forgiveness can be done in so many ways. So that's just one of 7. They're not prioritized. We don't tell people how to do it. What we're asking people is to consider that in terms of our own being better humans.
And we're here with Dr. Neal Lester, who's director of Project Humanities at Arizona State University. Go Sun Devils.
Well, it didn't go this last time.
No, they didn't. They went, but not the right way.
Right.
But they did have that great victory over Michigan State.
Yeah,
so.
well, and that'll go down in history. Yeah.
Right. So let's talk about the event you have coming up, the hackathon. You know, when it's a Hacks for Humanity, the 5th annual Hacks for Humanity, which will be on October 6th and 7th. You know, when I'm thinking of hacking, you know, it's got that negative connotation, and feel like, oh, I just got hacked. I can't believe it. Oh, Lord have mercy. But
well, yeah, and that's one of the challenges that we have. Well, in the technology world, that's not always the way that it's received. In the non-technology world, that's how we receive it, because it's something bad. And I had to be educated on that as well by Ken Colburn of the Data Doctors, who explained that hacking is actually building something.
Okay.
Hacking is not breaking into something. Now, I guess you can technically build something that you can break into. And that's why we call this Hacks for Humanity, Hackathon for the Social Good. So we're talking about bringing people together who are not necessarily techies and coders, but people who are designers and entrepreneurs and humanists and artists, coming together for 36 hours and in a competition and building a technology for the social good. And we're looking for everybody from high school students through retirees. And the idea is that you come for 36 hours, you team build, you network, you collaborate, you have fun, you eat, and there's a competition and there are prizes at the end. But what's threading this event and all of the pieces of it is Humanity 101. So whatever technologies are built, and it doesn't have to be an app, it can be a video game, it can be a website, any kind of technology, but it has to have 3 of those 7 principles that we talked about earlier.
Oh, okay.
And that's what's made it unique. I think people do hackathons a lot, particularly on the East Coast and the West Coast in Silicon Valley, around MIT and those places. They have hackathons, but those hackathons are usually prepackaged teams. They're usually people who come in who do technology all the time. And what we're trying to do is to reach those people who do technology as well as the ones who don't, so that you really get a sense of what true collaboration is. It's not necessarily hanging out in a silo with the same folks all the time, but also talking to people and working with people that you ordinarily wouldn't. So in this moment of what we call disruptive innovation, there's all kind of synergy that comes out of that. And that's I think that's what has created to the interest in this, particularly from our supporters, who see this as something that they haven't done, even though they do the technology part. So I was telling you earlier, I was down at the University of Texas, Dallas. That's primarily a technology school, and they presented to me that they wanted to do our hackathon, not do a hackathon, but do our hackathon with our principles. We're going to do them at the same time. Even with the 2-hour difference, we'll be exchanging workshops and keynotes and looking at we're not competing with each other. We're actually doing it as a partnership.
Collaboration.
We're doing it as a collaboration. And this is, to my knowledge, one of the first I know around particularly this, because again, they do hackathons all the time, but those hackathons have to do with people coming in and say, well, here's my challenge, build something for it. Whereas we say, come in, meet people you haven't met, create some new networks and collaborations, and create something that you could not do if you just stayed with people who are all in your same area.
It's kind of like building a new neighborhood.
It's building a new neighborhood, Mr. Rogers, yes.
Right.
It's building a new neighborhood.
I got my sweater. But
it's building a new neighborhood, yes. And asking people to be their neighbors.
Right,
which only makes sense. That State Farm would be one of our major sponsors. Right.
Good.
And like a good neighbor, they have been there the past 3 years,
That's
too.
excellent. Because, when I first heard about it, my thought was, it's a technology thing. And even though my original
you are a technology guy.
Yeah, coming down here was tech, but I'm out of that field.
And we're using technology now.
Right, true, absolutely.
Right. But here's what the deal is, though. The deal is, because people imagine if you're coming into a hackathon that the moment you set your foot in the door, you start this coding. Well, that's not what it really is about. And so what we say is that true community comes when people bring their own sets of skills to the table. So coding, if we're going to talk about that part of it, is only one aspect of it. We need people who are designers. We need people who are asking the questions. We need people who are researching. Each team, and there are 3 to 5 members per team, will have to create a business plan.
Okay.
You don't have to be a coder to create a business plan.
Right.
And we teach people how to come up with a statement, how to look at what your competition is, how to figure out who your audience will be, and also how you're going to pay for this. So we've got an opening workshop on the difference between for-profit and nonprofit, because that will help you figure out. And that will be led by some local serial entrepreneurs who...
That's not those the Wheaties or...
No. There's a serial, as in over and over again. Okay. They are successful entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs.
Right.
And they have talked about the success of their enterprises has come from the very fact that they uphold and live these values. So again, that's what's keeping it together. It is not about create an app that will allow you to find which I sometimes need, your car in the parking structure if you don't park in the same place. There's a need for that. But that's not the one we're doing.
That's not it.
That's not the one. The one we're doing has the potential to do, which is what our very first one did in 2014. It's called Project Humanities. And that's been sort of the gold star of what these can be. 5 individuals who self-described themselves as misfits that nobody else wanted when they went around trying to find teams, came together, 3 students, 2 community members, not in technology, and they created an app that allows tweets to be filtered when they are self-harm or suicidal. Those tweets will immediately be connected with trained professionals, and those professionals can reach back out because there's a certain demographic that's going to social media before they actually self-harm. And that came from a very personal place of one of the team members who had a friend complete suicide and had done all this stuff on social media and nobody responded.
Wow.
So that's what I'm saying. So if you look at that relative to potholes, that's slightly different. Or another one that was successful had to do with creating a technology that allows parents who have children with ADHD to communicate with those children, whereas otherwise it's only trained professionals who can do that. That's what comes out of this.
Yeah, that's great, because I was going to ask you, what are the success types of things that come out of it, and how many people usually participate?
Well, we started off with like 75. So over the years, we have doubled that. Our goal this year is 250.
Okay.
I'd be happy if we got 200, because it's not always about the number of people, but it's the quality of the experience that we have there.
Right.
And yes, we would love to have this, but our success as a project over the past 8 years has never been solely measured by how many people come to our programs. Is what has that experience been like. And we have had programs with as few as 10 and as many as, 1,300. We haven't quite done the 5,000, 6,000 that we've had some organizations do, because we try to keep sort of at the core the talking, listening, and connecting. And I mean that in intimate ways, not that you can't do that in a Q&A, but in ways that we also haven't had the resources that some of those other folks have had to bring in those folks that do that.
Yeah. I like your talking and listening and connecting, because it kind of
TLC.
It kind of fits with we don't have the TLC part, but it kind of fits with Radio Phoenix's ours. Talk, sing, connect. So.
I noticed that when I came down. Well, it helps us remember that. You say, well, what do you need? We need a little TLC. And imagine. And we don't have to imagine that when there's so many conflicts going on, particularly when there's been great loss or some tragedy, then we'll stop and start talking to each other. And just like we're talking about humanities, it's like air we breathe. We don't really value it until we start suffocating. That's what we think about this humanity is. There should be a way that we are consciously thinking about our humanity. We are consciously thinking about what it is that we can do to be better, not necessarily make other people better, but how can we be better? And that's where the self-reflection and the technology is just one small part of that, because we tend to there can be a tendency to look at technology as though it is neutral. And all we have to do is look at the ways in which people in my family, for example, don't have computers. So this whole notion of taking pictures and, having them on a computer that they can get is not necessarily that they experience. So what we do in this sort of technology world is we're looking at the human element. What is this doing? You're not just building technology for the sake of building technology, but how is this making people's lives better? So if, for example, we can recognize, when we're talking about artificial intelligence, that there are some algorithms there that have biases in them. So that's the kind of stuff that we are hoping that people get from this. It's not that you just go in and build something, but that you're actually being very mindful and deliberate and intentional about why it's being built and what purpose it's going to serve. So we look at those unintended consequences too. So this is what makes this very different is that typically, if something like this is going to be built, you wouldn't invite people from other disciplines to participate in it. This, we require other people from other disciplines. So when you sign up as an artist, as a coder, as an engineer, as a designer, as a humanist, as a futurist. And then that becomes how you form the teams, because each team needs to have representatives
from all those aspects.
Yeah.
Excellent. Dr. Lester, tell us a little bit about, you were saying the event is 36 hours long. Is it a sleepover?
It is a sleepover. Well, that's if you go to sleep. Okay. You will be in a space for 36 hours from 8 a.m. to probably 6 p.m. Sunday. And people, we tell you what to bring a pillow, sleeping bag, blanket, toothbrush, toothpaste, change of clothes, because people do stay over, all night. I recognize also that, some people don't sleep. So the option is there, and teams can decide whether or not they want to leave the site and then come back. Okay. But the building itself will be secure and locked so that people cannot just be going and coming at will, because that's a security and a safety issue. Right. But yes, the idea itself is that from beginning to end, but that doesn't mean that people will be, plopped over a laptop for 36 hours. Plus, we got workshops, there are activities, so it's not nonstop doing something on a computer. Okay. We've got games. We've got food nonstop. There's coffee and water and other things to drink. But it is family friendly in that sense, and it is on campus at the Stauffer Hall there at ASU Tempe campus. But we also have at midnight, for example, on Saturday night. There 11:30 p.m., 12:30 a.m. will be a pizza line dance party. So pizza line dance. People pizza and line dance. So we'll be wobbling and Texas two-stepping and then early morning there's an option for Rise and Shine yoga. Okay. And there'll be therapy dogs there as well. And lots of energy, lots of synergy, and lots of doing stuff that a lot of people haven't stepped out of. And even if you came in previous years, this will not be the same because different people will be there. Right. And we have different tracks for you to sort of navigate this time around the Humanity 101. This year, the tracks, and so teams will choose a track. It will be mobility and social justice and parenting. And so even within that track, we don't give you the challenge. What we tell you is here's something, find a research problem, challenge within that track, and then build something. And so it's a lot of fun. And there's a competition at the end, and the competition will involve learning how to pitch, which is like your elevator speech,
Okay.
which everybody has to do, whether you're trying to get a job individually or trying to pitch a product that you're trying to market.
Right.
And we'll teach you how to do that. We have judges. We won't name them now because we want them to be as objective as they possibly can. Mm-hmm. But for those who don't want or can't do the 36 hours, we want to highlight also that we have 2-hour blocks for mentoring. And we want diverse mentors just as we want diverse participants. And I don't mean diversity just in terms of gender and ethnicity, but I'm talking about we want developers and business folks and engineers and artists and the non-coders there to interact with these teams, to bounce critical questions off, and to be there as a resource. Everybody brings something to the table.
Right.
So just as we say the participants bring their own skill set, we know that mentors do that. And the other category of people who can participate will be volunteers who just help us with the logistics of this 36-hour event. So there is something for everybody.
Something for everybody.
Yep.
It's going to be an amazing event.
Oh, again. And the other part that I did mention is that we've managed to get the attention of the University of Texas, Dallas, and they will be doing. I did mention it earlier, but I want to highlight that because that shows that we're actually expanding our reach and potentially our impact. So this is a technology.
So will they be like simulcast type
Simulcast,
thing?
that's right. They'll be live streaming, and we will be looking at what they're doing. They'll be looking at what we're doing. We'll be sharing some of the workshops and some of the plenaries so that we are showing that we can be as separate as the fingers, yet one as the hand. And that, as you know, is our graphic for Project Humanities. Loosely borrowed from Booker T. Washington, but I like that idea, can. Doesn't mean we have to be and are. It means we can be.
That's great. That's great. So how do the people get in touch or find out more information?
Well, the easiest way is to go hacksforhumanity.io, or you can simply go to the Project Humanities website, Project Humanities at asu.edu, or you can call me at the office at 480-727-7030.
Okay.
It's very easy to find, and we want everybody. We'd love for people to register ahead of time because I did mention catered food, so we can't have 50 people showing up, but we didn't order enough food.
Right.
We also will be giving out swag. We want to make sure that we have enough, and we have to be really, really thankful for our sponsors who have been very, very generous in not only showing their commitment to this, but also jumping in and saying we want this to be successful. So we've got State Farm, we've got Amazon, we've got Silicon Valley Bank, we've got PayPal, we've got Amazon, the ASU School for the Future of Innovation in Society, and ASU Entrepreneurship and Innovation, and a slew of supporters that are providing in-kind things for the raffles, everything from Portillo's chocolate cake. We'll be giving that out. We'll be giving out some kind snacks, and then some great movie tickets, and then the prizes are pretty awesome. So in the past, we've given Fitbits and iPads and technology things.
I think I need the
an
iPad.
So, and then last year, I want to show you the range of the kind of support we've had. Last year we had a mattress company give out new mattresses. And initially, I didn't think that was such a big deal, but students reminded me that they could use a mattress, and then I realized that mine is about 20 years old, so technically I could use one too. So what I can say is people don't come for the prizes, but I can tell you what you will take away from this will be beyond what your expectation, even if you're aware of that sort of hackathon culture.
Well, we really appreciate you coming out, and I know you have to run to another event.
Got to go to another promotional event, but I thank you again for all that you've done over the years to support me, but also the project, and also for being involved in it.
Absolutely.
So, thanks again.
Yes. Just one quick note about the thing that you do on Saturdays.
Yes. It's also part of the Humanity 101. We call it Humanity 101 in Action. We call it Service Saturdays. It's a homeless outreach, and in fact, it's coming up this coming Saturday morning, 6:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. Please don't say it's way too early, because we have the privilege of going back to a bed.
Right.
And hunger and homelessness don't necessarily go in time cycles.
Right.
We do this all year round. We've been doing this for 5 years. There are 150 to 200 adults experiencing homelessness. And we distribute from 6:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. Toiletries, shoes, and clothes. And we are always, always desperate for men's items because 75% of our clients are actually men. There's something about being able to come down and be of service to other people that can sort of get us to shift our own perspectives when things seem to be wallowing for us.
Right.
So we invite everybody out. That's intergenerational. That's multi-denominational. It's trying to do good work. And what I like about this is it offers a nice balance. We can do the technology stuff. We can do the stuff in the classroom, but we also get into the spaces where people are. And the humanity that we experience and witness is transformative, both individually and collectively. So everybody's invited to both of these activities.
Excellent. And thank you again. And well, have a good day.
Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you out in at least some part of these
Absolutely.
activities coming up. Thanks again.
You bet.